The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to another edition of the Spot Track Podcast. My name is Mike Giannetti. Happy Sunday, March 5th, franchise tag deadline week. Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern is the deadline for teams to offer the franchise or transition tag to a respective player. Certainly some names still to come. Deadline spur actions, as Andrew Brent tells us every single year. It's coming, and that's sort of the root of my conversation today. I'm going to start with the Dallas Cowboys. Not really a tag-related conversation, although Tony Pollard is in that market. But I'm going to respond to, I think, what is a significant story, which is Jerry Jones basically saying Dak Prescott's contract is a problem. I'm going to give you every angle I can give you from a number standpoint, and every number I can give you from every number standpoint, to give you both sides of the story conversation with how Dallas has handled the Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott last 5 or 6 years from a number standpoint. And then similar conversation, but very different, and I think very different ending. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, where are we going with that? Not just a what is Lamar worth conversation, I promise. I'm sure you're sick of those, and those are not stopping, by the way, because if he doesn't get the franchise tag, look out. Full conversation about the cash spending in the Baltimore Ravens, and then specifically the wide receiver, the tight end, the combined pass catching spending of the Baltimore Ravens in what I think is the total Lamar Jackson era now. And then a few thoughts on Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, where those franchise tags are headed and where those multi-year contract extensions might be headed as well. So it's an all football show. Dallas, Baltimore, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. That's all next. I put out a passive-aggressive tweet that was referencing the Dallas Cowboys. For those of you who don't know, right? Running backs and quarterbacks comments. Look, it's combine week / weekend. This time of year drives me absolute berserk because of the smoke and mirrors, because of the minutia, because of the rumors, because everybody's kind of sitting together in one room, and ideas quickly turn into tweets, and tweets quickly turn into stories, and stories quickly turn into, well, that's where we're going with this whole conversation. I stay away from it. One particular thing stood out to me, and it was the Cowboys comment. I think it was Jerry Jones himself, basically referencing, and look, this was very much taken out of context, so I'm going to display both sides of the story here, at least from my point of view. Basically saying it's complicated to build a roster with a quarterback contract that like we have. Totally fair sentiment. There are 15 other organizations in the league that can claim this right now, and the word impossible wasn't used, and the word, insurmountable wasn't used. Simply just saying it gets difficult. This is an organization that is polarizing from A to B, from Jerry Jones all the way down to, the logo, right? The stadium, everything about this organization is over talked about. I want to spell this out with numbers because it's something I don't do enough of, even on this show specifically. But I don't want to just throw out loose tweets and then not have anything to back it up with. This is how I assess the Cowboys, a team I actually like a lot right now, quite a bit. I think whatever happens in New York with this Daniel Jones situation, and we're going to get there, is going to be not so much a step back, but I think is going to infringe on how they're going to be getting better immediately. It's going to take a minute with Joe Shane and that Brian Daboll system to fit every element, right? It took a couple of years in Buffalo, and then the year before Daboll shipped off to New York, the right move, by the way, for him, Buffalo really started to have that roster together. And it takes time. It takes drafts. It takes free agencies. It takes trades. It takes everything. They've been through it. They know where this is going. But I think this kind of shock with a Daniel Jones contract, or even a franchise tag, which is even more damaging cap-wise, and then a Barkley loss and a lot of defensive losses and a Leonard Williams situation, yada, yada, yada. My point is the Giants could be drawing back just a little bit on the field in 2023. So I actually think the Cowboys, and by the way, Philly, we've talked about, a lot of free agents, a lot of holes to fill. The Jalen Hurts contract's coming. That's not going to affect them cap-wise this year, as we know. But there's just a lot of mouths to feed. So it's there to take if Dallas can figure this thing out. So Jerry Jones coming out and saying, look, we're it's a difficult task. Dak's going to need another contract. not because he's playing out of his mind and simply has to get out of this current one. It's because he's got 2 years left on this thing. He's got a near $50 million cap hit this year. He's got a $52 million cap hit next year. They're going to restructure something this year to bump up that 52 to even more next year. There's already 2 void years on this contract. He's approaching 30 years old in about 3 months here. It's just how this thing works. It's why Kirk Cousins every couple of years continually gets another 2 years guaranteed tacked on. It's cap. Cap equals cash for these quarterbacks because you have to manage this thing. You have to keep the train moving. And if you're still worthy to be around for 2-3 years, teams are just going to continue to do this. Hell, the Detroit Lions did this with Matthew Stafford, even though they had absolutely no other part of their roster intact, right? It was just a baloney at a wall situation, but they loved the quarterback, the guy they drafted and homegrown. It's just how it works out. It's why Stafford's top 5 in all-time earnings right now. Not to mention the lack of the rookie wage scale when he joined the league. But Dak's getting into this conversation. And, they're going to have to do something, if not this year, immediately at the end of next year, to get out of that 52 plus million, to get him a nice big juicy signing bonus again, to keep the void years from automatically voiding after 2024, to make sure the dead cap is spread out as much as possible, and just keep the train on chucking. So the Dak side of this is real. And I do want to poke one hole in a lot of things people are saying. I'm going to break it down year by year here for you. But just keep this in mind. In 2021, when this contract was signed with Dak, remember, there was a last-minute tag that quickly converted into the multi-year extension. And it was the second tag because, of course, he played on that first tag in 2020. So they slapped the second tag on him for a minute and a half, immediately announced the 4-year, $160 million contract. $95 million fully guaranteed at signing, $126 million totally guaranteed, which includes this upcoming season. Fully guaranteed salaries for 2023. It's the 95 I want to talk about. We've talked about this before. You probably heard it elsewhere as well. Guaranteed money at signing on NFL contracts. The owner takes it out of his pocket and puts it in an NFL account. It goes into escrow. The league still requires owners to front that money for privacy, safety, security purposes, blah, 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 even though everybody's making $1 billion, a year here. So $95 million cash had to leave Jerry Jones and had to go to an NFL escrow account. That is something worth commenting on from his point of view, right? That's not nothing. We've had a handful of owners now pumping out near $100 million like this for their quarterbacks. We're going to see the Bengals do it, most likely, unless they do some sort of craziness with the guaranteed at signing. We're definitely going to see the Eagles do it based on what happened with Carson Wentz a couple years back there. So that's a point that can't get glossed over. That's a significant transaction for anybody, any human being, right? Even if they're oil men like Jerry Jones. $95 million leaving your account and going to another account, it's a big enchilada. So we focus so much on cap and AAV and blah, blah, blah. This is a cash conversation right now. Right, that's a real cash transaction. Now, Dak didn't get it all at once, right? He got $75 million up front, basically 66. The second he signed that March 9th deal. Although I'm sure there was some payment scheduling, maybe a couple years, maybe every 6 months, something like that. You never know. It's all customized based on the negotiation process. But that 95 goes away immediately for Jerry Jones. So, $75 million cash in 2021. Allocated on the books to the Dallas Cowboys. That's not nothing. That's a huge 1-year payout, especially for a player that at the time, right, was coming off the injury, had the franchise tag. That's a big payout. It's a big, big enchilada that a lot of these quarterbacks are now going to try to exceed, if not meet. It's not going to be likely, right? Mahomes didn't even make $64 million in the first 3 seasons of his new contract. Different animals, different strokes for different situations. But this conversation absolutely backs up what Jerry Jones is saying. Those are, now look, self-induced, right? They waited. They let this thing get to a franchise tag. They let this thing get to a second franchise tag. Then they signed their starting quarterback. That was the genesis of my tweet. And I rolled in some running back conversation as well, which I'll get to in a second here. So this was a self-induced problem. It didn't have to go this way. Dak Prescott, a 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State, right? The number 135 overall pick, who started immediately, played 16 games for 3 straight seasons, and then, of course, needed a contract extension, didn't get one. Now, he was holding out for $40 million. He knew that 40 was the number. He knew that 40 in 2021 was going to be 50 in 2022, and it sure as hell was. That's where Aaron Rodgers got 1 year later. So the expedition of this whole process was clear as day to anybody following this stuff. And the Cowboys knew it, and the Cowboys were simply looking to tread water a little bit. And in doing so, you can say that Dak Prescott got the exact contract he deserved, fair market value, $40 million a year, 2 years fully guaranteed, 3 years guaranteed after 2. That's standard stuff. That's the contract I'm floating out for Daniel Jones. That's the contract that, Geno Smith, maybe 1 year less, should be considering with Seattle right now. That's a standard order of business in a quarterback negotiation process. If not more years maximized with total guarantees. All of that seemed great. And at the time, I think we even said out loud, look, this is the contract he was supposed to get at any point in time. It's the structure. It's the cash flow. It's the signing bonus. All of that Dak wiggled out of this thing. Why? Because he had all the leverage. Because there was a $38 million second franchise tag sitting there that was holding that cap hit on a team that had a massively expensive offensive line, a massively expensive edge rusher at the time, and a massively expensive running back, not to mention Amari Cooper's $20 million per year at the time. In other words, they put the quarterback contract last, and in doing so, they forfeited their ability, clearly, to structure this thing to work for them. Now, $75 million cash up front with a $66 million bonus ended up giving them nice cap hits, right? There was a halfway decent low cap hit that actually got lower because they converted his base salary the day before the season actually started. They restructured Dak Prescott's contract 6 months after he signed it, before the first season on it even started. So there's everything you need to know right there. They were up against it. This thing was structured in Dak's favor, not in Dallas's favor. And you can hem and haw about should Dak have done better. At that point in time, he got put through the ringer, right? 2 franchise tags. I'm the guy. I've been the guy since day one. I was never supposed to be the guy. You had Tony Romo. You drafted me in the middle round as sort of a Hail Mary backup plan, and I ended up being the guy. And that's where it got to. It got to 6 years later. I'm finally getting the contract. If anything, the AAV is the concession. It could have, should have, would have been higher. Now, the injury probably impacted that a little bit, but I'm talking structure here. And like I said, and I'm going to say it again, because I want to back up my passive aggressiveness and a lot of the comments that are being made out there. There is a significant amount of cash flow on this. Front-loaded, immediate, not to mention that $95 million in escrow. That impacts any franchise, including Jerry Jones, including the Dallas Cowboys. So, fair point from Jerry. However, self-induced. Don't let the quarterback contract get this far, right? Baltimore's finding out. And by the way, Baltimore, the reason I've been absolutely slamming my hand down this time, saying Baltimore is going to let this thing get to a trade. It's going to happen. It's going to have to happen because the contract that the Jerry Jones and Dallas gave Dak Prescott with $75 million up front, $95 million at signing, all these wonderful player-friendly items, Baltimore's never doing it. Never. Okay. It's never going to happen. And if it happens, it will be 100% precedent setting. It will be a brand new era of Baltimore Ravens business. Truly. Okay. They have never gone this route. The Joe Flacco contract couldn't be more traditional, right? They haven't broken stride for anybody. I think there were a couple players that they really wanted to, but they haven't. They have stuck to their guns. They've been, mildly successful in doing so. But if Lamar thinks this is the kind of leverage he's pulling out of this, it's not there. Dak was able to do it. And it affected Dallas's payroll, cash payroll. However, I made note of it. I'm going to make a bigger note of it now. That was March 2021, Dak's 4-year extension. In September of 2019, Dallas handed Zeke Elliott, a great player. And by the way, and I had to look again because I didn't want to come up here and sound like an idiot. Dak has continued to be great. All right. And there's been injuries, but not as many as we think. All right. Since he signed the contract in 2019, right before the start of that season, he played 16 games, then 15, then 17, then 15. Okay. He's averaging right around 1,100 yards per season. Right around 48. I'm doing this off the top of my head. About 48 catches. Now, that came down significantly last season, as did much of his role. But last 4 seasons, touchdowns scored 12, 8, 14. Okay? Tons of production. This guy's not just a polarizing figure and a cool trading card. All right? He is productive. And there's a lot of teams that would take this. Now, he's going on 28. You know, there was certainly some decline last year, missed a couple games as well. And, you know, Pollard clearly took over that role. No question about it. But we got to go back to the contract here. I just wanted to get that out front. I am not sitting here saying this is not a player that should have gotten a contract. He was worth it when it was signed, and he has remained worth it since. But no running back should have guarantees in year 4. And that's just a brutal, terrible, disgusting fact right now. It's just a fact. Okay, this was an 8-year contract. It was signed the first time that he became extension eligible, immediately after, well, not immediately, but after that 3rd year. Like I said, it was September, just before the season started. So they gave the whole offseason and then did this. Remember, Zeke had a holdout. I think he went to Cabo, whatever it was. But they turned 2 years remaining on a first-round contract, right? The 4th year plus the 5th year option, which was exercised. They turned those 2 years into 6 new seasons, 8 seasons total. Okay? And 4 of those 8 had some form of guarantee. And not only did it have some form of guarantee, it had an early guarantee. $28 million guaranteed at signing, right? Everybody hears that and thinks, what are we complaining about here? They could have got no. There is no out. The potential outline in this contract has been after 2022 since the contract was signed. 4 years out. It's a phenomenal deal for Zeke Elliott. It's 4 years, $50 million, basically. That's what he was going to get. It sure sounds like he's going to get more of this, right? And by the way, productivity-wise, he should get more of this. So if they can figure this out, keep that cap low, maybe drop the $11 million cash a little bit and keep him around, I get it, you know? But he's going to make upwards of $60 million off of this contract, tacked on to $20 million from his rookie contract. We're talking about an $80 million running back here. It's awesome. And he's been great. Enough said there. But how in the hell do you have a running back contract that was signed as early as humanly possible with 4 years of upfront or early vesting guarantees, and a quarterback contract with 3 years of upfront or early vesting guarantees? That's a problem for Dak Prescott. That's a significant problem. By the way, they were trying to go longer, Dallas. And one of the things Dak said was, well, you waited too damn long, all right? And I'm not going to be in this huge, long contract at age 32 and have almost zero chance of re-upping this thing. I give him credit for that. That was another concession that he made with his leverage, right? They wanted 5, maybe even 6 years. They wanted to be able to option bonus and spread everything out like they love to do, and they did it with Zeke. And he refused. He refused to give into their structure. And as we noted before, it became his structure. And it's a damaging structure cash-wise for the Dallas Cowboys, at least for a year or two. Right? It's 95 over 2 years for Dak Prescott, just so you know. Damn near 50 a year on this contract. It's all about him. And that's fine. He got put through the ringer, as I've already said out loud. But you got a quarterback contract with 3 years guaranteed, and you got a running back contract with 4. Okay? So there are a lot of teams that are looking at this situation and saying, Jerry, you did this to you, man. Okay. The Amari Cooper contract I thought was perfect, and they traded it. And they traded it for a can of beans. Now, in hindsight, having seen the freaking wide receiver offseason we had last year. So, again, that now dips below this Zeke contract because I thought it was perfect. It was year to year at $20 million a year, which now is, second tier, third tier pay for a WR1. And you had CeeDee Lamb on this rookie contract. You had a great situation set up 1-2 financially. Now you're going to pay Lamb. You're going to keep Zeke. You're going to extend Dak. You got to rebuild this half of this offensive line. You got an edge rusher to pay. And then next year's Micah Parsons. So it's a tough time. And I think they really got caught with this one. There is no question that I believe that they wanted Zeke Elliott around. No question. There is also no question in my mind that there is not a person in that front office, some of which may not be there anymore, maybe because of this specifically, that doesn't regret the Zeke Elliott contract, the structure of it, the early guarantee of it, the length of it, everything. Nobody else is going this route. Not a single team. Doesn't mean it's immediately wrong because of that. But in this case, it's wrong, okay? The only silver lining, in my opinion, is that you were able to overpay Zeke and underpay Pollard and maximize production at that position, right? They kind of worked that beautifully. So to keep Zeke around, even with the dead cap structure that they have, and then slap a tag on Pollard, are they just tripling down on this whole situation? It concerns me, okay? Because they have been all over franchise tags this past decade. Dalton Schultz last year, obviously Dak the year before. And now they're going to put a running back on a tag, which isn't going to break the bank. But when you toss in the Zeke situation, it's going to add up. Some quick numbers, because I don't want to just totally blow the Cowboys apart here. I told you I'd have some numbers. Total team cash spending. If we go back to 2016, when Dak was drafted and immediately thrown in the fire, 16 games he started. They went 13-3. They lost in the divisional round series to the Green Bay Packers. So it was a phenomenal season. And the reason I'm setting things up this way is they were 10th in the league in cash spending that year, which is fine, but it has no impact on this conversation, right? They didn't even know what they had in Dak Prescott yet. When they were spending their free agent money and blah, 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 Dak was not even on the roster yet, right? He was not even drafted at that point. So that number is moot. The important part of that conversation was that Dak Prescott started 16 games, went 13-3, and went to the divisional round and lost to Aaron Rodgers. A phenomenal start to his career, after coming literally out of nowhere, So now they knew what they had. Now they knew they were going to move off of Romo. Now they knew where the immediate new direction that this franchise was going. Here's the problem. 2017 cash spending in the league, 30th. 2018 cash spending in the league, 30th. That's it. That's a period, exclamation point. Okay? That's the mistake. That's why they're in this massive contract, massive cap, constant restructure mess. If they had Philadelphia Eagled this thing, if they had Miami Dolphin this thing, to some degree Buffalo, even though a lot of Buffalo is really homegrown. But, you can talk about the Diggs trade and a lot of things. If they had recognized the situation and immediately put their foot down on the gas pedal from a business standpoint, right? Let's go buy a cornerback. Let's go buy an inside linebacker, right? Because this is well before Micah Parsons. Let's go buy as many weapons as possible to put this thing around Dak Prescott. Think about the wide receivers who were with Amari Cooper at this time, who wasn't even here yet. Now, they went and got Cooper from the Raiders, so that was one buy. But how can you catch lightning in a bottle in 2016 and then just sit on your hands and ride it out? And the reason I'm able to look at this number alone and say they did that is obviously new contracts would have signing bonuses. Signing bonuses inflate cash payouts. that would move them well up the list in cash spending in any given year. To be 30th 2 years in a row with a rookie quarterback, a 4th round rookie quarterback, it's just preposterous. It's just insane. Okay? It's insane. And still they continue to restructure and move cap. You got to be an absolute revolving door, right? If your contract doesn't work for us, we're going to find somebody that does work. And if we have to overpay for it, we're doing it, because this 2 to 3 year window we have with Dak now in this unbelievable rookie contract is going to become, an ice cream sundae the size of a mountain. And we have to utilize it right now. They didn't start doing their damage until 2019 with that Zeke contract, with the DeMarcus Lawrence contract, with all those bells and whistles. And finally in 2020, they got themselves the 3rd in cash. And then obviously in 2021, 2nd in cash because of the big, gigantic $75 million Dak situation, plus some, like a franchise tag and all sorts of stuff. I just think they missed their window. That's my point. And by the way, it could very well be why the Dak Prescott situation dragged for so long, right? Because after 2019, they probably started looking around and thinking, well, how the hell are we going to manage this cap? And what are we going to do with that? And we're going to continue to extend to DeMarcus Lawrence. What are we going to do with that? Just keep restructuring. We get him a new deal. There were a lot of tough decisions to make. So again, I'm going back to the Jerry Jones conversation where he basically said the quarterback contract really, was a stamp on top of our business situation. Of course it was. Of course it was. But also at that point in time, before they had signed Dak, my guess was they're looking around thinking, shit, right? What the hell were we doing? How did we miss this so bad? Look, Zeke is great. If you don't sign Zeke in 2019 and you're just throwing money at a defense instead, nobody's going to argue with you. Nobody. Now, there's a lot of Zeke fans out there, especially in Dallas, who would be pretty pissed off about it for 6 months until, the 2nd round pick you drafted or yada, 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 brought in off the street was 85% as productive, right? It's just how that works at that position, unfortunately. But so many decisions came late. And then eventually the quarterback, right? Because that, for some reason, was the last piece of this puzzle. And my thinking is this. My thinking is they looked back at 17, 18, and 19. And when Dak was sitting there now well eligible for an extension after 2019, Dak's looking around saying, where the hell's my money? And they're looking around saying, why do we have all these contracts to pay? Well, I'm raising my hand over here. Okay. It's because if you had structured a massive free agent blow in 2017, just a gigantic class, right? And slightly front loaded, but normally, 2017 took a hit, 2018 took a bigger hit, cap and cash. That's standard for any free agent signing, class that you want to keep around for multi-years. Most of those contracts could have probably fallen off after one season, and you could have done it all over again in 2018. But you're getting my point. If you had blown the doors off of 2017 with spending wise, and then back that up with what did we miss in 2018, which is standard protocol now. It's what Buffalo's going through. It's what the Eagles are about to go through. Certainly Miami, after their big offseason last year, they're going to plug some holes all offseason here as much as possible. If they had gone that route, many of those contracts would have the guarantees would be falling off by 2019, 2020, which would have made signing Dak way easier. Well, look, we're going to cap casualty a couple of those great signings that gave us, a couple extra wins every year for the past 2 seasons in Dak's rookie window. But we got to blow that away right now because we got to bring Dak in on a $60 million bonus and, $90 million guaranteed. That would have been standard protocol. It's how basically everybody else is about to do this, right? The Cincinnati Bengals, they're going to cut Mixon, they're going to cut Lyle Collins, and those are going to be the casualties that are going to allow, from a cap and cash standpoint, Joe Burrow to get a big bag of dollars, right? Philadelphia doesn't even have to because they've got so many contracts falling off their roster. They're just going to start with a Jalen Hurts contract and then fill in the blanks after that and hope that whatever they were able to do works. And generally speaking, they've been able to do that in the past. So that's where we're going. I think maybe the Chargers situation is a little bit like this Dallas one. Now, they've done some spending, okay? Keeping their own, bringing in some heat. Maybe they've fallen in love a little too much with their own players, which is very Dallas-y, and that's hurt them. But they've gone J.C. Jackson. They've gone big time, right? Derwin was a big pick and a big contract. They've done their work in the Herbert window. And now, unfortunately, that window's closed because he's about to get back. But that feels a little Dallas-y, right? The injuries, the drafted players that sort of just kind of get pushed along when maybe they should be moved on from and immediately upgraded because this is our go time. This, gas pedal all the way down. So I'd attribute a Chargers Dallas combination a little bit, but not Cincy. They play on their own set of rules, and certainly you can talk the Ravens as much as you want, and I'm going to hear in a second. But that's it. Long story short, I think they botched this Dak contract, and it very well could have been that they didn't believe in it, right? How the hell did we just get this fourth rounder basically off the street to usurp our, golden boy Tony Romo, who couldn't play anyway with his back? And should we believe this? Should we truly invest around this player right now instead of just saying, all right, this is Russell Wilson 2.0. We got one. Let's go. Let's spend. And then when it's time to pay him, we'll figure it out if we can keep going or if we got to draw back a little bit. 30th, 17th, 3rd, 2nd, 29th. That's the cash spending of the Dallas Cowboys in the Dak Prescott era. It's backwards. Okay. So, yep, the quarterback contract definitely hurts, makes it difficult. It's not impossible. Okay, Patrick Mahomes just won a freaking Super Bowl, everybody. It's not impossible, and I'm not even talking cap, right? We're talking cash. But you got to play the game right. There's a formula. There's a template. And certainly the template is the league is handing you a rookie wage scale. They have handed you this wonderful gift. And if you are lucky enough to rub the genie, right? To rub the genie and have a quarterback come out of it, especially outside of the first round, you now have a 2 to 3 year window of absolute pixie dust being draped all over your franchise. And if you just sit there and let the dust settle and let things play out as they will, it's going to look a lot like Dallas from 2017 on. And if you say, holy crap, we just won the lottery, let's go spend this money on a truckload of immediate talent, maybe it'll look like some of these other rosters that are flooring themselves up to the top of their conferences. Let's talk about the Ravens a little bit because the Lamar stuff's not going away. We've got the deadline in about 48 hours here, less than, right, for this franchise tag, which I do believe he's getting. I don't even care which one he gets at this point in time. There's part of me out there that thinks the Ravens are just going to say, we're done with this. And non-exclusive tag him at 32.4 and put him on the trade block and take 2 first-round picks and say, okay, that's it. Because it'll be quick and dirty and get him out of here. And they can sort of dictate the team. There'll be more teams in so they can work with Lamar and make sure it's the right team for everybody. And it's a team that maybe doesn't affect them too much. But if they exclusive tag him and make things a little bit more complicated, that's their prerogative. And it's certainly better business because I do think there's much more than 2 first-round picks out there for a player like Lamar Jackson, especially if the right team, and the one team specifically that I've been saying all along, is actually willing to go in. Now, my thinking is, executive A and executive B from the Baltimore Ravens and this mystery team probably just had a couple of nice conversations in Indianapolis this past week, right? And there's probably an understanding of what executive B's team is willing to offer up, is willing to pay Lamar Jackson, because obviously Lamar's not doing anything. He's not signing any kind of franchise tag unless he knows exactly what kind of money is sitting on the other side of that rainbow. So it would be, in my opinion, very telling if Tuesday morning an exclusive tag is offered to Lamar Jackson, which again will come at 32.4 up front until April when things can be adjusted to that actual exclusive number based on the top 5 quarterback salaries at that point in time. Not now, then. And then there's just a negotiation process. And it's either, Lamar, here's our last offer from Baltimore. It's $175 million fully guaranteed. It's a 5-year contract. We're not going longer. We're not giving you shorter, fully guaranteed. This is our offer. We want some flexibility with the cap. We don't want to go $200 million guaranteed. It's too much out of our pockets up front, and it's just too much risk with your injury history. And Lamar says, great, I want 5 for $220. End of conversation. Fully guaranteed. And Baltimore says, God bless goodwill. Go get it somewhere else. Hopefully you're getting 50 fully guaranteed per year. We have a team that has told us that they're willing to give us, the draft compensation that we're looking for. And they're willing to give you upwards of $200 million fully guaranteed. So, more than we were able to offer. Probably not exactly what you're looking for, but we think you're going to be able to negotiate a good, fair, strong value contract with them. So we want to make the move. We need you to play ball to do that. And obviously, if you've listened to me before, you know that I'm thinking the Atlanta Falcons here, who I do think have the right, at least start of a system in place offensively, especially on the offensive line, to, now look, it's going to cost, right? Because they got to pay a guard, pay a center, pay a right tackle, rebuild an entire defense, great free agency to do that, and then acquire and extend Lamar Jackson. But I think it's a massively aggressive but intelligent move for a franchise that essentially has been rebuilding this thing slowly on the fly for only about 3 years now, right? The Matt Ryan stuff really fell off quickly. Obviously, Julio dropped off a cliff there after a couple of seasons. But this is, it's not too long ago they were in the Super Bowl. So I think this is a team that can smell it still and just has to throw a ton of money at an offseason here, quarterback included. And I think that there's that possibility is sitting out there. Now, does it ever get to fruition? Who knows? But, and by the way, not the only team. I think Washington would be partially available for this. I think the Jets at least are sniffing around this. Carolina very much sniffing around this. So we'll see. But in all this conversation, similar financial questions are coming up about, did Baltimore do enough in the Lamar Jackson era? Now, they're very different conversations, in my opinion, because Lamar came out not just swinging. He was a late first-round pick. He was an MVP. He immediately rose to, can this be the new wave of quarterback, right? It's not just, is this what RG3 could have been had he stayed healthy, had he really developed his game, had he understood the progressions better? Lamar got better and better and better and better, and then injuries. So Baltimore was never going to do this, guys. We talked about this. I think my old buddies Paul Peck and Kevin Sylvester were on with me back when we were doing those shows. And I think we all came to an agreement that where he was drafted and how he was brought into the system, and then how quickly he rose to the top, and then how quickly things sort of started to deteriorate, not so much production-wise, but just the availability, the trust, some of the things that were being said out loud from Lamar and from other side of this, his lack of an agent. There's just a lot of angles that are red flags. And I told those guys 5 years ago on this show, if any team's going to do this, if any team is going to not just slow play, but literally run this thing to a course and then chop it off at the quarterback, it's going to be Baltimore, who are, as I mentioned, rigid, stubborn, strict, and to some degree frugal with the way that they do business. It's intelligent. I'm not saying it's not. It's, at some point in time, you got to be able to go out and stick your neck out for something. To me, it never seemed as though Lamar Jackson was going to be that. Now, maybe one of these sides caves and he remains a Baltimore Raven on some form of contract that we've been talking about here. I don't see it happening. And I didn't see it happening 5 years ago. So this isn't a huge surprise to me that we're here. Now, I wish Lamar had shut us all up and stayed healthy and stayed available and stayed on that upward trajectory where he certainly came out of the gate, flying. But it didn't happen. And unfortunately, this is what most teams assume are going to happen with multi-versatile running quarterbacks like this. So this wasn't the guy. This isn't the guy that proved us wrong. And by the way, Deshaun Watson wasn't the guy either. So you can speak until you're blue in the face about the contract that he has, but you have to talk about why he has it, not that he has it. He didn't get it because of what he did on the field. Okay? Partially, for sure. But there's an awful lot built into that. Okay? He was basically thrown into a slingshot, pulled back, and just sat there waiting for 6 teams to bid on him, 4 of them aggressively, 3 of them sounds like fully guaranteed. And here we are. I don't think there's a GM in the league, including the ones that were bidding on Deshaun Watson at that point in time, who are willing to do that again. Even for Lamar, who I think is a better quarterback. So I don't think Baltimore's going to get there. Did they do enough in the era of Lamar Jackson, assuming that it's now over? Team cash spending, same conversation as the Dallas Cowboys we had a couple minutes ago. Lamar came in 2018. Baltimore's total spending was 32nd, 18th, 16th, 11th, and 20th. And 20th included Lamar's 5th-year option. How about the wide receivers around him? Cash spending during the Lamar Jackson era. 18th, 20th, 30th, 25th, 32nd. I pulled the PFF grades for the top 3 wide receivers in Baltimore each of those seasons. Out of the 15 grades, right? 3 per season, 5 seasons. Out of the 15 grades, only 2 were in the top 50. 49th and 47th. Both of those grades went to Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, who was traded last draft to Arizona with no replacement in mind. They didn't draft his replacement. They simply just said, okay, Bateman and Devin DuVernay, you're the guys now. We're going young, even younger and cheaper because we're not going to pay Hollywood, and he knows it and he wants out. That's it. So the one guy who was actually cracking, the top 50 among wide receivers, you traded away before Lamar could even basically get a grasp on him. That's a problem. And you can say this is all jaded and I'm angling and come on. That's a problem. Okay. If I'm giving you this conversation with Dallas in total team spending, and I just told you basically the Ravens are exactly the same, right? I think that their 5-year average here is 19th in the league. So less than half. And then we focus on wide receivers. And it's not like running backs were any better. Rookie running backs across the board. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, across the board. Mark Ingram got a cup of coffee and then was traded. Brought back and then was traded. Now, to be fair, I thought it was necessary because this is something I'm not hearing other people doing. Okay? The pushback on this conversation is, okay, but they're a tight end friendly offense. Yes. Okay, so I brought all the tight end numbers in. And they're obviously better. The Mark Andrews contract and even some higher draft picks with higher rookie wage scale contracts. Here's your tight end spending in the Lamar era, ranked in the league. 11th, 12th, 26th, 3rd, 1st last year. 1st. PFF rankings for tight ends in the Lamar era. I took the top 2 tight ends each season. That's 10 out of 5 years. 2 top 5s. 4 top 15s. 5 top 20s. It's good. It's good. I mean, it's not elite. Mark Andrews was above average. There's no question about it. And the tight end 2s were acceptable. I mean, most of these grades are in the top 50. Most. In fact, all but 1. So 9 out of 10 are in the top 50. So you can definitely offset this conversation a little bit here. A little bit. Total receiving. Now I'm combining the tight end conversation and the wide receiver conversation into one. Okay, total cash in the Lamar era. 19th, 20th, 31st, 10th, 26th. It's just not good enough. Okay, and the total PFF grades for those players in the Lamar era, rankings in the league, 27th, 15th, 28th, 20th, 26th. It's just not good enough. So all those people out there, trying to hot take this conversation, it's a real conversation. It's a real conversation. The Baltimore Ravens did not do enough, did not spend enough, did not acquire enough talent in any way possible, right? There's not a trade sitting out there, right? In fact, they brought Sammy Watkins back from the dead after 3 other teams had already tried that, okay? It's a real conversation. The numbers back it up. It's not just a first take discussion. It's real. Lamar was not given enough opportunities in terms of offensive talent. Now, yes, they paid the offensive line. I love what they did with their secondary. I think they probably have a surplus at the secondary, even though they don't have the weapons. It's kind of a Green Bay conversation to some degree. They didn't pay the inside linebacker, right? And then they acquired one and paid him. Didn't understand that. This is all in the Lamar era. I get it. It's a big roster. There's a lot of decisions. But to me, it's just another simple example of we hit lightning in a bottle. Late first-round pick, which even gives us the fifth-year option, which is a great advantage. Of course, they're going to use it. They're Baltimore. So how do you have that and not say, all right, we can push the gamut on the running backs, on the wide receivers? It's not like they went and acquired a tight end and paid him. No, they had him. They had him on a rookie contract and extended him. And he produced. I mean, that's what's supposed to happen in a lot of cases. But they didn't go anywhere outside the box. And in fact, they traded away their best available option. Maybe in the most important Lamar season ever. It's unacceptable. And I hate to sit here and be negative Nelly constantly, but I'm giving Lamar Jackson his fairness right now because he's about to change courses significantly, in my opinion. Again, I know nothing. I've heard nothing. Just reading the tea leaves here. So I think Dallas went backwards in the way that they managed the Dak situation and paid for it, literally 100% cash. And Baltimore will refuse to pay for it. Baltimore will say, well, we did it our way. It didn't get us to where we wanted it to be. But, and their thinking is Lamar just didn't hold up his end of the bargain. He couldn't stay healthy. He didn't come back this playoffs because he was pissed off about everything and slightly injured, whatever. They didn't do enough. Okay. There's enough numbers out there, and these are only on the surface. Okay. There's a lot smarter people out there doing deeper dives than this. And I promise you that they get the same result. They didn't do enough. They didn't do enough. They had draft assets. They were able to acquire one of the best off-ball linebackers in the league. But you couldn't get a wide receiver? Didn't do enough. So, me personally, this is my pledge that I hope the Lamar era in Baltimore is over. Because I think the guy, before he gets too old or too injured, obviously one of those things is very, very possible in the near future, deserves a fair shake. Deserves an organization that is willing to say, okay, you are the window now. You're here. You're the window. Let's go. Let's do this properly. And hopefully it's a team like Atlanta that has 4/5 of an offensive line in place, that has a defensive, lineman in Grady Jarrett, the kind of those unicorn players that some teams are going way too high in the draft for and then missing out on. In my opinion, the Falcons are set up to make the biggest 0 to 60 jump with a hell of a lot of cash and a ton of draft capital given up to bring in this whole arsenal, to rebuild the defense on the fly, to bring in Lamar, and to properly build around him. And by the way, for a year or two, it can kind of look and feel like the Baltimore offense, right? Because that Kyle Pitts situation's nice. It's a good running offensive line. Obviously, the Cordell Patterson, Tyler Algier situation is nice if they can retain those services. They've shown they can do a little bit of everything, is my point. And there's this guy named Drake London there. Right. And that's probably the player that he's just simply hasn't had. So I'm looking for this. I'm rooting for this. I've been rooting for this for over a year now. This has been the team that I've identified for Lamar Jackson for a long time now because they were trending upward quickly after that Matt Ryan debacle. And I think they're ready for it. So we'll see where we go. It's going to be a fascinating couple of weeks here. The franchise tag deadline is March 7th, Tuesday, March 7th, 4 p.m. Eastern. The negotiation periods for free agency start March 13th. The league year is March 15th. And then we're off and running. More quarterback contract talks coming soon. For those of you who follow me on Twitter at SpotTrack, I did a Daniel Jones and a Geno Smith mock contract. A full breakdown. And I'll bury the lead. Daniel Jones was 5 years, $200 million. I think that 40 mark is where everything falls into place. If it falls into place, I'm positive there's a franchise tag coming for him by Tuesday, maybe right at the deadline. But I think when the dust settles, somewhere along the lines of that $40 million per year, somewhere along the lines of $90 million or so guaranteed at signing, a $50 million bonus. Maybe there's an option bonus if Joe Shane tries to go the Brandon Bean route with a double bonus structure. I didn't do it that way. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see my breakdown. Basically, I threw him a nice bonus, a little over $50 million cash the first year. And I threw a gigantic, massive roster bonus in year 2. And basically, that's the fork in the road, right? That's we can tolerate the $42.5 million cap if we have to, if the Giants basically are saying, God, we got to get out of this thing as quickly as possible. Or if they're happy, if they're content, they restructure that massive roster bonus, flip it down with a couple of void years and go from there and drop that cap hit and keep the train moving with Daniel Jones and the Giants in 2024 and beyond. So I kind of built in the if-then condition into Daniel Jones' 5-year contract. I'm starting to hear that it might be a smaller contract, but at that price point. So maybe 4 for $160 around that. So that drops, is that $80 million guaranteed at signing? Then it's possible. It's probably around right. But I think what I put together there at least makes some sort of logical sense. And then with Geno Smith, I don't think the franchise tag is coming for Geno Smith. So, and by the way, I don't necessarily disagree with that move because I think I've said it a couple times, certainly on Seattle radio. Who are the Seahawks going to be competing against? This was kind of the Baker Mayfield conversation we had, and the Carson Wentz trade value conversation we had. Who the hell were the Commanders competing against for in acquiring Carson Wentz at full value, right? No retained salary. I just don't know. So I feel the same way about Geno Smith. Now, there's been talks about a reunion with the Jets, that maybe Washington themselves would be considering Geno Smith. I think everybody else in the league should be looking at him as toxic, not for negative reasons, just because this is a 1-to-1 scenario. This Seahawks offense, this coaching staff, these weapons, it's all working for Geno Smith right now. And it is a lot to ask this player to go somewhere else, start fresh, learn it all in the offseason, step in and be of equal value. It's just a lot to ask. And I don't think anybody's going to pay for that big of a question mark. So I laid out 3 for $75 with Seattle, 23 and change per year. Basically what this is, guys, is a cap adjusted version of Blake Bortles back in 2018 with the Jaguars. It's a little bit more, and it should be because the cap has just skyrocketed. So percentage wise, right? Percentage increase wise, if this thing gets to $25 million a year, God bless it, right? 3 for $75, $30 million bonus, 55 guaranteed at signing, right? 2 years fully guaranteed, 55 million over those 2 years, and then a 3rd-year option, essentially. It's probably right. If we're talking what a franchise tag would be, 32.4, a second would be around 39. So you're in that $70 million range. But, for cap flexibility purposes, we're dropping it down into the 50s. I think it makes sense. I don't know that we get there. This might not be a March 15th announcement, or certainly a March 7th announcement with the franchise tag deadline. So I believe there's a chance that he is allowed to test the market, that Seattle is basically going to say, look, we definitely want to sign you, but, your numbers are too much for us, blah, blah, blah. Go find this somewhere else. And then come back to us, give us a chance to match, blah, blah, blah. And Seattle's basically saying, we don't think you're going to have these offers out there. We don't think these numbers exist outside of this room. And we're willing to bet that you can't go find it. And once you don't, come back and we'll start talking about the contract offer we have. That's my read in this situation. I think it's a good move by Seattle. I don't think there's too much risk in losing him. And you know what else they have in their back pocket, guy? They've got that wonderful, beautiful, leveraged number 5 overall pick from Denver in the Russell Wilson trade, which is basically a sign they should put up in the negotiation room with Geno Smith, right? Here's why we're not overpaying for you, man. Okay? Here's why we're not doing it. My thinking is they can draft somebody at 5 and sign Geno Smith. Both those things can happen. Slow play this whole process. And if the number 5 pick, whatever, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, whoever the hell it is just too good to sit, then you pivot. But I don't think we're going to get a tag situation, and I don't think Geno Smith is going to get outpriced on the market. So I'm predicting a slower play with this than I am with the Giants and Daniel Jones, who I do think would get a significant contract offer from at least one team, maybe 2 or 3, if he's able to walk on March 15th. So tag coming for him, in my opinion, not so much for Geno Smith and Lamar Jackson. You've heard plenty about. It's almost baseball time. March 30th is opening day. The World Baseball Classic is this week. Plenty to watch, plenty to get to. Opening day rosters are coming together. I'm starting to put guys in the minors finally. That's a good sign. That means we're getting down from 40 to 26 on the actives. And we'll have plenty to talk about. Cousin Dan is feverishly creating notes, gambling ideas, all sorts of baseball-related content coming to the Spot Chart podcast soon. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Giannetti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spot Chart podcast.